My parents said the greatest gift for my sister's wedding is for me to disappear from their lives forever because I didn't fit their social image. I packed my bags, changed my phone number, and left town. They thought they now had the perfect family, but I discovered a secret that shattered their social image and made their entire world collapse: the ultimate revenge. My name is Valerie Turner. I'm 27 years old, and my family's greatest talent is curating the truth. I'm standing just out of sight, in the cool shadows of the archway leading into my parents' marble-floored foyer, watching them celebrate my younger sister, Jane. Tonight, everything is perfect. Everything is polished. Everything except me. Jane has just announced her engagement to Daniel Whitmore, the handsome heir to a political dynasty that makes our family's considerable money look like loose change found in a couch. Champagne flutes chime throughout the grand room, but the sound isn't joyful. It's sharp, brittle, like thin ice about to crack. From my vantage point, I can see the whole performance. Mom glides through the room, her smile a perfectly calibrated masterpiece of warmth and social grace. She touches an arm here, laughs at a donor's joke there, a queen surveying her court. Dad stands beside Daniel's father, their handshake looking less like a friendly greeting and more like the closing of a merger. This isn't a family celebration, it's a transaction. Across the room, Jane catches my eye. Her lips, painted a triumphant shade of red, pull into a tiny, knowing smirk. It's a look I've known my entire life, the one that says, without a single word, I win. She's shimmering in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car, a cascade of silver sequins that catches the light from the chandelier. I'm wearing a simple navy dress I bought on sale last year. It's my uniform, my visual statement of where I fit in this family, the somber, necessary shadow that makes the spotlight on Jane seem that much brighter. I'm the uncurated detail in their perfect picture, and I know my time in the frame is running out. After the last of the important guests have gone, their drivers pulling their luxury cars away from our curb, Mom and Dad call me into the study. This is the room where all family decrees are issued, a cold space paneled in dark wood and smelling of old leather and disappointment. They don't ask me to sit. This isn't a conversation, it's a briefing. The fire in the hearth crackles, but it offers no warmth. Valerie, Dad begins, his voice carrying the same flat, emotionless tone he uses to discuss stock prices with his financial advisor. We need to discuss your role in the wedding. Mom steps forward, placing a perfectly manicured hand on a leather-bound book as if to steady herself. Your sister's wedding is a pivotal moment for this family, she says, her voice smooth as silk. There can be no distractions. The word hangs in the air between us, heavy and sharp. Distractions, that's what I am, not a daughter, not a sister, a potential problem to be managed. As if on cue, Jane appears in the doorway, leaning against the heavy oak frame. She files a nail with a bored expression. You're embarrassing, she says, not with anger but with the casual cruelty of someone swatting away a fly. Dad clears his throat, bringing the execution to its final stage. The best gift you can give your sister, he says, looking at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder, is to not be here. We'll provide you with a generous allowance, of course. Find an apartment somewhere else. Out of state would be best. For a year, maybe 2, until after the wedding and things have settled. They're not disowning me, not in a way that would cause a scene. They're redacting me, erasing me from the page so the story reads more smoothly. I don't argue. I learned a long time ago that arguing with them is like arguing with a balance sheet. The numbers are what they are, and my feelings have never been part of their equation. I just nod, a small, tight movement of my head. I understand, I say, and the quiet obedience seems to satisfy them. I go to my room and start packing a single suitcase. This place has never felt like a home, more like a luxury hotel I've been allowed to stay in for far too long. I fold practical things, jeans, sweaters, my laptop. I leave behind the dresses and the jewelry they bought me, the props for a role I was never very good at playing. At the bottom of my jewelry box, my fingers close around a small, worn silver locket. It was a gift from my grandmother, a woman they erased from the family story long ago for being too loud, too opinionated, too much of a distraction. I tuck it into my pocket. It feels like a small, cold piece of forgotten truth. There are no tearful goodbyes, there are no goodbyes at all. I write a simple note on a piece of stationery and leave it on my perfectly made bed. It just says, "I understand." I walk down the grand staircase past the portraits of ancestors who probably also knew the art of curating their lives. I walk out the heavy front door without looking back. The sound of the lock clicking shut behind me is the first real moment of peace I've felt in years. My goal is simple: survive being erased. The obstacle is the suffocating weight of my family's power, a power that can make a person disappear without leaving a single trace. This isn't a fight. This is a strategic retreat, a quiet surrender that sends me hurtling toward a life I have to build from nothing. My new life is in a city 1,000 miles away, in a tiny studio apartment above a thrift store that smells faintly of mothballs and other people's memories. The contrast is almost funny. I went from a mansion with a staff to a room where I have to unplug the microwave to use the toaster. I take a temp job digitizing old newspaper archives for the local library. The work is quiet, mindless, and blessedly anonymous. I spend my days in a cool, dark room surrounded by the forgotten stories of strangers. My coworker, a kind man named Owen Patel, shows me how to feed the delicate microfilm into the scanner on my first day and then mostly leaves me alone. He asks no questions. He doesn't need to know my story. For the first time, no one knows I'm a Turner. I'm just Valerie, the quiet girl in the corner who wears headphones and never talks about her family. The monthly wire transfer from my father arrives in my bank account on the first of every month without comment or communication. It feels less like parental support and more like a gag order, a payment for my silence. I use it to pay my rent and buy groceries, and I try not to think about what it costs me in other ways. My evenings are spent reading books from the library and walking through a city where I am a complete stranger. The anonymity is a relief so profound it feels like I can finally breathe after being underwater for 27 years. I realize my old life was never quiet. It was filled with the constant, grinding noise of performance, of trying to be the right kind of daughter, the right kind of sister. Here, there is only silence. I am a ghost haunting the archives of someone else's past. It feels strangely, deeply appropriate. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, a headline from 10 years ago scrolls slowly across my scanner's screen: "Teen dies in dawn hit and run." My job is just to scan and file, not to read, but the date at the top of the page catches my eye. It was the summer Jane turned 17, a summer I remember as being particularly tense and strange. The article includes a grainy, black and white photo of the vehicle involved, a luxury SUV with a distinctively cracked fog lamp on the passenger side. My breath catches in my throat. A memory surfaces, sharp and unwelcome, a memory I hadn't thought of in a decade: my father's limited edition SUV, that exact model. I remember it disappearing for a week that same summer. He told us it was a manufacturer recall, something about a faulty sensor. I remember him being angry about it, his voice tight and low on the phone with the dealership. My blood runs cold. I lean closer to the screen, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. I read the name of the victim, Tyler Bennett. He was 18 years old. The article mentions a suspect, a young man who worked for local families as a handyman and gardener. His name is Leo Alvarez. He wasn't charged with the hit and run itself, the paper says, but with obstruction of justice. He took a plea deal and served a short sentence. The article ends with a small, almost throwaway line that makes the hair on my arms stand up. The Turner Family Foundation made a generous donation to the local community fund to assist the grieving. My hands are shaking so badly I have to grip the edge of the desk. I quickly save a digital copy of the article, burying it in a hidden folder on my laptop. For a moment, I just stare at the screen, the hum of the old machine filling the silence. Then, a cold resolve settles over me. My first tactic is simple. I start searching online, diving into the digital rabbit hole of my family's past. I look up Leo Alvarez. His digital footprint is a dead end after his conviction. There are a few old social media profiles from high school full of smiling photos and hopeful posts, and then nothing. He just vanishes. I search for the Turner Family Foundation, a name I've seen on plaques and charity gala programs my whole life. I find their public financial filings online. The donation mentioned in the article isn't listed as a contribution to a victim's family, it's vaguely labeled community outreach. The amount is significant. It's far too much for a simple gesture of goodwill from a family who barely knew the victim. It looks less like a donation and more like a payment. The pieces aren't a full picture yet, just jagged, ugly edges of something I don't want to see. The car that vanished, the conveniently timed donation, a young man's life ruined by a lesser charge, it's all circumstantial, but the pattern is sickening. My research hits a wall. The internet can only tell me the official, curated story, the one my family paid for. To find the truth, the real truth, I realize I have to find the people my family buried along with it. My first target has a name. I have to find Leo Alvarez. It takes me 2 weeks of digging through old public records, cross-referencing addresses, and making cautious, anonymous calls to find him. It turns out Leo Alvarez works as a night shift stalker at a 24-hour superstore in a rundown industrial town 3 hours away. I drive there on a chilly evening, the highway lights smearing across my windshield. I find him on his smoke break, sitting on a concrete curb behind the store, illuminated by the harsh yellow glow of a security lamp. He looks older than his 30-something years, with exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. They're distrustful eyes, the kind that dismiss you before you even speak. I park my car and walk toward him, my boots crunching on the loose gravel. He watches me approach, his posture tensing with every step I take. "Leo Alvarez?" I ask, my voice sounding thin in the cold night air. He just looks at me, taking a long drag from his cigarette. I take a breath. "My name is Valerie Turner." His whole body goes rigid. The cigarette drops from his fingers. He stands up abruptly, ready to walk away, to disappear back into the shadows of the loading dock. He wants nothing to do with that name. I can't blame him. "I know what my family did," I say quickly, the words tumbling out. "I think they framed you." He stops and turns, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping his lips. "You're a little late," he scoffs. 10 years late? He tells me to leave him alone, that he has nothing to say to a Turner. He says he has a life, or what's left of it, to live, and it doesn't include digging up graves. His bitterness is a wall, thick and high, built from a decade of injustice. He's been burned by my family's world, and he has no reason on earth to trust me. I realize this is more than just asking him for information. I'm asking him to reopen the deepest, most painful wound of his life. I can see the permanent stain on his reputation, the weight he carries every single day, right there in the slump of his shoulders. "They sent my father's car away," I say, keeping my voice low and steady. "The one with the cracked fog light. He told everyone it was a recall, but I remember him on the phone with the dealership. He was yelling, furious. There was no recall." This detail, this small crack in the official story that was never in the papers, makes him pause. His hostile gaze softens just a fraction, replaced by a flicker of wary curiosity. "My mother was their housekeeper," he says slowly, watching my face, searching for any hint of deception. "They gave her a generous severance package when she quit, right after I was arrested. Told her it was for her years of loyal service. She thought they were being kind." He tells me the story I couldn't find online. The police found one of his work gloves near the scene of the accident. He'd been at our house doing some yard work 2 days earlier, but he couldn't account for how a single glove got a mile down the road. He says his public defender, a young, overworked lawyer, urged him to take the obstruction plea. "Fight it," the lawyer had told him, "and a jury will hear about a rich kid who's dead and a poor kid with no alibi. They'll find a way to make the bigger charge stick. Your family has connections," he says, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. People like me don't stand a chance against people like you. I pull out my phone and show him the digital copy of the article, my finger pointing to the line about the Turner Family Foundation's donation. He stares at it for a long moment. A sliver of trust, a fragile and dangerous thing, begins to open between us. It isn't born from kindness or forgiveness, but from the shared identity of being ruined by the same people. He finally agrees to talk more, but not here, not under the buzzing security light of a place that represents everything his life has become. We agree to meet the next day at a quiet roadside diner halfway between his town and mine. Over lukewarm coffee, he tells me about a body shop his uncle used to recommend, a place on the outskirts of the city that dealt in cash and asked no questions. If anyone fixed that SUV without leaving a paper trail, it was them, he says, stirring his coffee with a plastic stick. This is it, our first piece of a real plan, our first tangible lead. As I drive back to my apartment that night, I feel a spark of something I haven't felt in a long time: hope. I'm not just digging through the past anymore. I'm building a case. I'm finding a truth that was deliberately buried. But then, as I'm pulling into my parking spot behind the thrift store, my phone buzzes. It's a text from a number I don't recognize. My stomach clenches as I open it. It's a picture of me talking to Leo in the diner, taken from a distance through the window. It's grainy and dark, but it's unmistakably us. A moment later, a second text comes through. It's from my mother. I was just thinking of you, it reads. I hope you're not getting into any trouble. It would be a shame to have to cut you off completely. The message is crystal clear. They're not just watching the news, they are watching me. My newfound hope curdles into a cold, hard knot of fear in my stomach. The vulnerability is real and immediate. This isn't just about a secret from 10 years ago, it's a present-day threat. The problem is wider and more active than I ever imagined. This isn't a dormant secret. It's an actively, ruthlessly guarded one. The next day, Leo and I drive to the auto body shop. It's a grimy, low-slung building on the industrial edge of town, smelling of gasoline and spray paint. The business is under new ownership, but Leo knows the new owner's son from high school, a connection that feels like a minor miracle. After some tense negotiation and the exchange of $100 bill, he agrees to let us into the dusty, cluttered back office where the old paper records are kept in sagging cardboard boxes. We spend hours sifting through greasy, faded ledgers, the pages sticking together with years of grime. The air is thick with the smell of decay and forgotten business. My hope begins to fade with the setting sun. It feels like a fool's errand, another dead end. Just as we're about to give up, our hands in clothes covered in filth, Leo lets out a low whistle. I think I found it. He points to a page in a thick, leather-bound ledger from 10 years ago. My eyes scan the handwritten entry. It's for a cash repair on a luxury SUV matching my father's exact model and color. The work order is brief but damning: front-end collision repair, passenger side. Replace fog lamp assembly. The client name is left blank, but the payment is a round, significant number, paid entirely in cash. There's no insurance claim, no official record. This is it. The first piece of hard, physical proof that connects my father's car to a secret, off-the-books repair right after Tyler Bennett was killed. We take photos of the page with our phones, making sure the date and the details are perfectly clear. The images on my screen look sharp, damning, and incredibly dangerous. Holding this proof feels heavy. It's no longer just a memory or a suspicion. It's real. We've found the missing link between the accident and the cover-up. Finding Ruth Bennett is easier than I expect. Her address is still the same one from the old article, tucked into a quiet street lined with maple trees and small, tidy houses that all look like they were painted the same shade of hope a long time ago. I park at the curb and sit for a second with my hands on the wheel, steadying my breath. Then I walk up the path and knock. She's small and sturdy, with gray hair pulled back and a face that has learned to hold itself together. When I say my name, I see her flinch just a little, like the Turner name is a sharp edge she's learned to avoid. Her eyes harden, the door stays half closed. I'm not here to hurt you, I say. I believe my family is responsible for your son's death and I have proof. That last word, proof, hangs there between us. She studies my face for a long, heavy moment, weighing if I'm a cruel joke or something else. I hold up my phone, the photo of the ledger open, the entry clear, front-end collision, passenger side, replace fog lamp. Cash, no name. Her hand lifts toward her mouth like she needs to hold in a sound. Her eyes shine. She opens the door. Come in, she says, both of you. The living room is neat and carefully kept, like a space you'd clean before church. There are photos of a boy from every age, missing front teeth, soccer uniform, prom tux arranged on a bookshelf and the mantel. Tyler's face is everywhere. The air smells like lemon, polish, and tea. There's a blanket folded just so over the back of the couch. Ruth disappears down the hall and returns with a shoebox. It's old and dented at one corner. She sets it on the coffee table with both hands like it's heavier than it looks. This is what they left me with, she says. Her voice is steady, but I hear the scrape underneath it. Paper, she lifts the lid. Inside are letters in a dozen different envelopes. Some are addressed to the police chief, some to the county office. One to Dad, his name written in a careful hand that must have been shaking anyway. The oldest stamps are faded to a pale blush. A few have stickers that say received. More have never been opened. She pulls one out and shows me the crease lines worn soft from being read and reread. I just wanted them to look again, she says. I kept thinking if I keep putting his name in front of them, someone will care. She looks up at me and the question in her eyes is simple and savage. Will you? Leo sits at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, his head bowed like he's praying. I can see his jaw working. A muscle jumps in his cheek. The photo of the ledger on my phone glows on the table between us like a hot coal. I reach across the coffee table and touch my finger to Tyler's prom photo, just the glossy corner. We're not going to let them make him a footnote, I say. Not anymore. And I mean it with every part of me that's still alive. We spread everything out on Ruth's coffee table, the article, the ledger photo, copies of her letters, a printout of the donation line from the foundation filing. Papers edge over each other like puzzle pieces that never thought they'd fit. The late afternoon light slants in through the blinds, striping the room in pale gold. My first thought was to take this to the police, I say, and I hear how shaky it sounds. But I know how my family works. They'll make calls, they'll turn it into a dead end again. They've kept it buried for 10 years, Leo says. His voice is rough. You don't bury something that deep and then let it see daylight because someone asks nice. Ruth sits straight, hands folded. There's a photo of Tyler as a little boy on the table near her fingers. His smile is missing one front tooth, his eyes bright, a smear of chocolate at the corner of his mouth. I want people to know his name, she says. They can keep their gala speeches and their plaques. I want Tyler to be said out loud and I want them to hear it. Her words spark the shape of the plan I didn't know I was already making. I picture Jane's wedding like a glittering wall of glass. If I throw the truth hard enough, it has to break. The wedding, I say, my throat is tight. It's in 3 weeks. I can hear the orchestra in my head, feel the silk and the cameras and the eyes of 100 people who wouldn't look at me twice unless I became a headline. They've spent months curating every second of it, every photo, every speech. It's the perfect stage. Leo looks up, catching on. You want to crash it. Not just crash it, I say. Thread the truth through it so tight they can't pull it out. Programs, slideshow, the efficiency mic. Everywhere they planned something beautiful, we put something real. My hands are shaking, but the shiver feels like power instead of fear. And we don't rely on one thing, we hit from every angle. We get a reporter ready to publish as soon as it starts. We send everything to the Attorney General's office the same minute. We don't let it live or die in one room. Ruth's eyes fill. She nods once, a small, fierce motion. I don't want revenge, she says, and I know it's only partly true. I want the truth to be louder than their money. I look at the locket in my palm, the one piece of family that feels like mine, and feel the last ties to Mom and Dad stretch to their breaking point. Going back won't be an option after this. There will be no new allowance, no apology brunch, no let's pretend it didn't happen. If I do this, I end whatever fake version of family I still had left. We'll need help, I say, someone inside the wedding vendors. Someone who can swap things, a reporter who won't blink. We have to be careful, they have eyes everywhere. Leo nods. I know some people who might hate your father more than I do, he says. I'll make some calls. Ruth reaches for a napkin and presses it to her eyes. When she looks at me again, her gaze is clear. You do what you have to do, she says. I will stand beside you. We sit there a while longer, the three of us quiet, the papers whispering in the fan's soft breeze. My heart pounds, but in a new rhythm now, not fear, movement. A mission. While we're mapping out names on a notepad, Ruth pauses, her brow furrowing like a cloud passing over sun. There's something else, she says. She sets the pen down and goes back to the shoebox, digging through the letters with careful fingers. I kept this separate because it felt different. I don't know why. She pulls out a pale blue envelope and holds it like it might crumble. The paper has a soft sheen, a tiny embossed flower in the corner. The postmark is from a month after Tyler died. My fingers tingle. I got this in the mail, she says. No return address, typed. It doesn't even have my name spelled right. She gives a breath/laugh that isn't a laugh at all, but I kept it. She slides the single sheet out and lays it on the coffee table. The short lines are centered down the page as if someone thought that made it less cruel. It says, "It wasn't a stranger, they know who did it, don't give up." The words are like a trapdoor opening beneath me. The room tilts. I touch the edge of the paper and feel the weight of recognition hit my skin. That blue, that tiny flower, that exact stationery. I'm in my parents' kitchen, 10 years younger, watching Jane tear open a pale blue box like it's a crown. Custom made, Mom had said, proud and pleased. Jane had held up the sheets, smiling in a way that meant she loved herself more in that moment than anything she could write on them. She'd used them for everything for a while: thank you notes, party invitations, little lists of who to invite and who to ignore. My mouth goes dry. This paper, I whisper. Where did you get it? It was in my mailbox, Ruth says. No name, no one ever owned up. I thought maybe it was a cruel prank or maybe an angel, I didn't know. I pick the sheet up, careful not to smudge the typed letters. The flower presses against my thumb, small and sharp. I see Jane's hands, her perfect handwriting, her practiced innocent face. What did she know? How much did she know? And who told her to keep it quiet, then let her play at being kind in the most cowardly way? I look at the words again, don't give up. It lands like an insult now. She knew they were hiding a life, and she didn't say Tyler's name out loud. She slid a hint into a grieving mother's mailbox and then went back to playing the golden girl. The betrayal blooms hot in my chest, hotter than anything Mom and Dad ever did to me with their coldness and edits and blank looks. Jane wasn't a clueless princess on a marble staircase. She was a watcher. And when given the chance to stand up, she chose to whisper. I set the paper down and feel something burn clean inside me. Whatever part of me still hoped she was only a puppet, that part is gone. That night when my phone lights up with Jane's name, I stare at it for a long count of 3 before I answer. Her voice pours through the speaker like warm syrup. Val, she says, stretching my name into something soft. Finally, she doesn't ask how I am, she doesn't ask where I am, she starts talking the way she's always talked in rooms with mirrors. I've been thinking, she says, about you, about us. Mom and Dad went too far, I told them that. I miss you. She pauses just long enough to make me think she might mean it. I don't want this wedding to be a reason for us not to be sisters, it should bring us together. I stare at the blue paper on my coffee table and say nothing. She takes my silence as room to move. I heard some rumors, she says, dropping her voice, that you've been calling people, stirring up old pain. I get it, you've always been sensitive. And this whole thing 10 years ago, it was hard on all of us. I was a kid. We were told not to talk about it. I thought it was a stranger. I thought, she gives a tiny, practiced sniff. I was scared. I let the lie sit there, quiet and lit from beneath by a small, pressed flower. Look, she says, tone brightening like a light coming on. Let's make this easy. Come home, please be my maid of honor. I want you up there with me. We can put all this behind us. Dad will set you up, you won't have to worry about anything, money, work, any of it, we can be sisters again." The words should feel like a rope thrown down to me. Instead, they feel like a leash. She says sisters again like there was ever a real version of that, like we didn't grow up on two sides of a glass wall, me smearing my breath against it and her smiling for the cameras behind it. My thumb rubs the edge of the locket in my pocket until the metal warms. I imagine what sisters again looks like in practice, me in a pastel dress, holding her bouquet, smiling for photos, swallowing an apology that never comes, nodding when people say how lucky I am to be part of something so beautiful. Tyler's name sitting like a stone in my throat while the band plays something cheerful. "You think this is about money," I say. My voice sounds strange to my own ears, calm or address. "Or being allowed back in the room. It's about family," she says, quick. "It's about love." "Then say his name," I say. "Say Tyler." There's a beat of silence so long I can hear the traffic outside my window. When she speaks again, her softness has gone. "Valerie," she says, my name hard now. "This isn't the way." I look at the blue paper, at the little flower that was once a badge of her taste. "You could have told the truth," I say quietly. "You could have told it then." "I was a child," she snaps back, and I hear the steel Mom taught her to sheath in charm. "And I'm telling you now, stop, there will be nothing left for you if you don't, nothing." She's right in one way. If I keep going, there won't be a Turner net to catch me, there will be no allowance. No study filled with leather and Dad's bored voice calling me reasonable. No Mom arranging her face into sympathy. No Jane holding out a sparkling hand and calling it love. I take a breath and taste the cheap soap I used to wash my dishes. I stare at the coffee table covered in paper, proof that a boy's life was traded for a clean story. I think of Ruth's small hands holding a box of letters that never made anyone move. "No," I say, "just that one small word that feels like a door slamming shut." Jane inhales sharply like she's found a hair in her soup. Then the voice that has charmed half our city goes flat. "You're making a mistake," she says, "and you won't like how this ends." "I can live with that," I say, and I hang up before she can turn my no into something else. The room is very quiet after the call. The pale blue paper lies on the table, catching the lamp light. I slide it back into its envelope and tuck it into Ruth's shoebox like I'm putting a blade back in its sheath. Then I sit very still and listen to my heart pound, counting it like steps down a hallway I can't turn back on. I sat on the floor after I hung up, my back against the couch, the room spinning softly like I'd stood too fast. The pale blue envelope sat on the coffee table, the little flower catching the light like an eye that would not blink. I thought of every gallery night Mom curated, every speech Dad polished, every time Jane tilted her head just right for a camera. All of it was a wall of glass they built to keep the world from seeing the cracks underneath. I was done being the quiet shadow that made them look brighter. I took out a pen and a grocery receipt and started listing the parts of a perfect wedding. Programs, slideshow, vows, music, efficient speeches, thank you gifts. I stared at the list until it shifted from nouns to doorways. Each one was a place the truth could live. I called Leo first. He answered on the third ring, voice rough. "Yeah, change of plans," I said. I told him about the wedding in 3 weeks, about turning every polished moment into a carrier for Tyler's name. It's not enough to hand it to a detective and hope. We put it in front of everyone who ever nodded along with my family. We make sure people can't pretend it's not there. He was quiet for a beat that felt like an hour. Then he said, "You're serious?" "I am." "Then I'm in," he said, and the way he said it made my throat burn, not because it was easy for him, but because it wasn't. I called Ruth next. She listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she looked at the photo on her mantle of Tyler at 8 years old, his hair sticking up and a missing tooth, that forever smile. "If you think you can put his name in the mouths of people who have never said it," she said, "I'll stand right there with you." There was a long pause where all I could hear was my own heartbeat. I thought of walking back into that study, facing Mom and Dad, hearing the word distractions again. I thought of the blank space where my name used to be in their version of our family. "I'm going to have to light it all on fire," I said. There won't be anything left for me there. Ruth reached across and put her knuckles on the table, a small anchor. There never was, she said gently, not for the part of you that tells the truth, I exhaled. We'll need inside help, I said. A vendor or two, someone to swap out programs, and someone to push the story fast and public the minute it starts. And we'll package what we have and send it to the state office that can really move on it. Time to land with the news. 3 fronts, no way to smother it. Sounds like war, Leo said. It is, I said. I slid the locket chain back and forth through my fingers until it warmed against my skin, and I'm done fighting like a kid asking permission. They made me disappear, I'm making sure the truth can't. 2 days later, there was a sharp, professional knock on my door at 10 in the morning, not a neighbor, not a delivery. When I opened it, a guy in a smooth suit and a polite smile handed me a thick envelope with my name typed on a label. He didn't ask for a signature. He just nodded and walked away, his shoes clicking on the stairs like a metronome. I stood there with the weight of it in my hands, heart thudding. The paper inside was heavy and smelled faintly like dust and something chemical. The letterhead took up half the page, a long, expensive name that was better known than some sports teams. The words were cold and careful. Stop contacting people. Stop spreading lies. If you don't, we'll take everything you have and more. It used bigger, fancier words than that, but the meaning was plain. There was a signature at the bottom, a name I didn't recognize. But the paragraph above it mentioned a firm that advises on crisis matters, and that jogged something. I sat on the edge of my bed and searched the name of the fixer online. Articles poured up about a man who specialized in making ugly stories dissolve for people with the kind of money that buys a new timeline. Marcus Doyle. He was photographed stepping out of cars behind men who smiled for cameras and women who wore diamonds like armor. The quotes about him were always the same: efficient, discreet, ruthless. I could practically hear Dad's voice in the letter, even though it wasn't his name at the bottom. When you can't shut someone up with charm, you use fear. When fear doesn't work, you use money. When money doesn't work, you use both. Louder. I pictured Dad in his office, loosening his tie, saying "handle it" into the phone. I pictured Mom at the kitchen island, texting half the city while she stirred her tea. I set the letter on my table next to the grocery store candle I lit when the room felt small and dark. The flame flickered, washing the gold over the black ink. My hands trembled, and there was a part of me that wanted to crawl under the bed and stay there until this was all a bad dream. Instead, I took a slow breath. I snapped a photo of the letter and saved it. Evidence of their attempt to scare me quiet. My phone buzzed, a number I had saved as Leo. I answered, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Hey, 2 suits showed up at my job," he said, skipping hello. His words came fast, chopped up by panic. They had that smooth act. They talked to my manager, said I was causing trouble, said I was harassing people. They didn't say your name, but they didn't have to. What happened? I asked, even though I already knew. I got called to the back. My manager looked like she'd swallowed a bee. "Restructuring," she said. "Sorry, there's nothing I can do." They followed me to the parking lot. One of them smiled so hard his face looked like it might crack. He said, "Careful, Mr. Alvarez, you have a record." Nobody wants to see old things dusted off. I sat down hard on the floor. The carpet scratched my palm. "Where are you now?" "In my car," he said. I could hear his breath, tight and sharp. "I can't lose another job. I can't do this." "Valerie, I can't." I pressed my fist to my mouth for a second to hold in all the things I wanted to say to those men. "They want you to walk away," I said. "That's the point. They're trying to scare you so it's just me again, and they can write me off as crazy. If we stop now, they win." "They always win," he said, and the way he said "always" made me feel like a kid again, small and pressed flat by a thumb. "They already ruined my life once. I can't let them do it again." "Look at me," I said before I remembered we weren't in the same space. "Okay, listen, we're not going to let them ruin you twice. If you need rent, I'll help. If you need a new job, we'll find one. I know that sounds ridiculous coming from me right now, but I mean it. You don't have to fight alone." He was silent for a breath, then another. The quiet hummed like a wire. You can't outmoney them, he said softly. I know, I said, but we can outprepare them. Every time they hit us, we write it down and add it to the story, the picture of the ledger, the letter they sent me, the men who showed up at your job. This isn't just about 10 years ago anymore, it's about what they're willing to do right now to keep it buried. I'm scared, he whispered, and it knocked something loose in me because I was too. Me too, I said. We go forward anyway. There was a sound like fabric rubbing against a seat. I'll call you tonight, he said. I just need to calm down. I need to, he blew out a breath. Okay. Tonight? After we hung up, I sat there until my legs went numb, the printed threat and the pale blue envelope like two eyes watching me from the table. I thought it couldn't get worse. That was dumb. It started as a blind item on a blog I'd never heard of, the kind that loves phrases like sources say and a certain family. The post was short and sweet in the cruelest way. A daughter of a prominent philanthropic household was acting out due to long-standing issues of jealousy and instability. The words were vague, but the details were not. Anyone who knew the Turners could connect the dots. I clicked the comment section against my better judgment. Strangers did what strangers do. They filled in the blanks with whatever they brought to the table. Some defended the family, some laughed. Some said it was about time someone told the truth about the crazy one. I closed my laptop and felt like I'd swallowed a handful of nails. By noon, people from the old world started calling. Mrs. Langford, who used to pinch my cheeks at charity events and tell me I was the serious one. Mr. Green, who once said I was wise beyond my years because I didn't drink at a party. Their numbers popped up like ghosts. I let two go to voicemail. I picked up the third because part of me still thought if I explained, they'd say, oh, of course, we had no idea. Valerie, dear, Mrs. Langford cooed when I answered. Your parents are so worried. And Jane, what a strain for a young bride. Whatever this is, it's not worth it. You need to stop. Come home, get some rest. Everyone understands nerves. I'm not nervous, I said. I'm telling the truth. There was a pause where I could almost hear her rearranging her face on the other end. Sweetheart, she said, settling on pity laced with scorn. Sometimes we have to protect the people we love from our darker moments. I don't have darker moments, I said. My family does. Her tone chilled. You always were ungrateful. The line went dead. Others called with the same script. Concern that felt like a hand on the back of my head pushing me under. Your father has done so much for this city. Your mother has such a big heart. Jane is a light. The message under all of it was simple. Who do you think you are? Mom didn't call, she didn't have to. Her fingerprints were everywhere in the choice of the words, in the pacing of the pylon. Whisper to the right people. Give them phrases to repeat. Let it spread like perfume in a crowded room. My phone lit up with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Some warned me to be careful. Some told me I was evil. A few asked if I was okay in a way that made it clear they hoped I wasn't. I stood at my sink and washed a coffee cup I'd already washed twice, moving the sponge in circles until the porcelain squeaked. The window over the sink showed me my face, pale and set, the city warped around the edges. By evening, a local news site ran a small piece titled Rumors Swirl Around Turner Heiress. There was a photo of me from years ago, cropped tight so the smile looked a little too wide. The caption read, Valerie Turner, known for keeping a low profile, declined to comment. They hadn't asked me for one, they didn't need to, the story they wanted was already on the page. I turned off my phone and set it on the floor like it might bite. The apartment was so quiet the fridge hum sounded like a song. I stared at the ceiling, at the hairline crack that ran from the corner like a faint river. This was how they did it. They made you so tired and so small that you'd agree to anything just to make the noise stop. I looked at the shoebox on my shelf that Ruth had let me borrow for a few days, at the stack of letters that were truly heavy when you picked them up together. I ran my finger over the top of the lid until the cardboard felt warm. They're going to try and make me the story, I said out loud to nobody, but I'm not. I sat down and wrote out the timeline again, the night, the car. The glove, the ledger, the donation, the blue letter, the letter from the fixer, the men at Leo's job. I drew lines between them until the page looked like a map of a place you'd never want to visit. Then I turned the page over and wrote one name in the center, Tyler. Let them call me unstable. Let them paint me jealous. I wasn't the thing they were trying to ruin. The thing I cared about lived outside me now, in paper and numbers and a voice that would soon be too loud to ignore. I blew out the candle and sat in the dark long enough to hear the street sounds separate into pieces, the bus sighing at the stop, someone laughing 2 floors down, the rustle of a tree touching the roof. My heartbeat slowed enough for me to shoulder what came next. I remembered the way our driver used to clear his throat before speaking, like he had to ask permission from the air. Mr. Henderson. He disappeared from our lives right around that summer. I looked him up and found a small retirement home on the edge of the city with a brick sign and flower beds planted in careful rows. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and boiled vegetables. A television in the common room murmured a game show while a few residents dozed in wheelchairs. His room was bright with a window that looked over a parking lot. He was thinner than I remembered and older in the way a person gets older when they carry worry for too long. His eyes were sharp, though. When I said my name, he flinched like he'd touched a hot stove. His hands moved to the arms of his chair, gripping. I need to ask you about that summer, I said. About the car, about Tyler Bennett. For a long moment he didn't speak. The wall clock ticked. I could feel the hum of the air conditioner against my skin. Then he sighed, a thin, papery sound. I shouldn't, he said. They made me sign a paper, said it was for privacy, said the world didn't need more gossip. He stared at the window. They also said I didn't have a job anymore. I know what they do to people, I said, but a boy died and the wrong man paid for it. That cracked something. He closed his eyes like pushing past a door that stuck. I heard your father on the phone, he said softly. He was in the garage with the door down. He didn't see me. He was yelling, said he couldn't believe Jane was that careless. He kept saying, fix it. Fix it now, then he said, find something to tie it to the housekeeper's kid. He was here yesterday, make it stick. Mr. Henderson swallowed, his throat working. The next morning I saw him walking along the edge of the property near the road. He had his hands in his pockets. When he came back, he looked calm. He rubbed his fingers together like he could still feel the fabric of that day. A few hours later, the news said they found a glove by the ditch. A clue. The room tilted for me. The lemon cleaner smell turned sour. Leo's glove, I said. He planted it. Mr. Henderson nodded, a small, broken movement. I kept my mouth shut, he whispered. I was scared. Your father, people like him? He shook his head. I still have dreams where I'm standing by that road and I can't make myself call anyone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch my fist through the nice framed art on his wall. Instead, I pressed my palm against the cool metal of the bed rail and steadied myself. Thank you, I said, because the truth costs and he'd just paid again. He looked at me with a sadness so deep it felt bottomless. I liked you, you know, you said please and thank you. I used to think you were safe. He gave a short laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. No one is safe around people who think the rules are for everyone else. I walked out into the parking lot and leaned against my car, breathing in the heat until the dizziness passed. Panic would have been human, but this wasn't panic. It was cold, it was planned. My father didn't just cover up a crime, he picked a kid to carry it. He picked Leo. Malice, not panic, the words sat in my mouth like a coin. 2 days later, Ruth called me in the middle of the afternoon. I was at my kitchen sink washing an apple. Her voice shook with a tremor I'd never heard from her. They came, she said, skipping hello, 2 men in suits. They said they were representing someone who wanted to make things right. The way she said make things right sounded like a bruise. I sat down at the small table by the window. What did they offer? Money, she said, and the word came out like she couldn't swallow it. A lot of it. They put a check on my table. I've never seen that many zeros. They said all I had to do was sign a paper promising I'd never speak about any of it again, not to the press, not to a friend, not to myself, probably. She gave a small, watery laugh that broke in the middle. They were kind about it. That was the worst part. They used soft voices like nurses. Marcus Doyle, he'd finally knocked on her door. I pictured the suits, the polite smiles, the folder with the contract inside, the pen placed just so. "Where are they now?" "I told them I needed to think," she said. "They're coming back in the morning." She was quiet for a long moment. I heard the tick of her kitchen clock through the phone. "Valerie, I'm tired. This fight crawled into my bones and set up house there. I could buy new tires for my car. I could buy a new car. I could fix the roof. I could," her voice cracked. "I could go to the dentist without counting my pennies. Does that make me a bad mother that I even thought about it?" The question punched a hole in me. "No," I said, and my eyes burned. "It makes you human. This is what they do. They wave comfort in front of the people they hurt and call it a solution." Another long silence. I could hear paper moving like she was touching the check even while she hated it. "I walked down the hall after they left," she said. "I stood at Tyler's bedroom door. I looked at his bedspread with the little planets on it. It still smells like his shampoo a little if I press my face in it. I held the check up and all I could see was his face at 18. He looks like he's about to laugh in that graduation photo. Do you know what I thought?" Her breath hitched. "I thought, he can't laugh anymore." I heard myself whisper, "No, my son's life is not for sale," she said. Each word landed like the strike of a hammer. I called the number on the card. I told them no. I told them to take their paper and their money and go to hell. Relief washed through me so fast it made me dizzy again. It wasn't joy. It was the feeling of the ground under my feet right when you think you're about to fall. "I'm proud of you," I said, and we both laughed at the same time at how small proud sounded next to what she'd done. "They will come harder now," she said, steadying. "I know that." "I know," I said. The last safe exit had vanished behind us. There was no soft landing left, only the wedding, a place they thought they owned. The wedding was in 2 days. When I woke up that morning, the light in my apartment looked like a challenge, hard and white. My coffee tasted like resolve and burned my tongue. "We needed inside hands and loud mouths," Leo called around noon. "I found someone," he said. "A print shop owner, Sophie Walker. Your father stiffed her 5 years ago, promised a contract, took her samples, then gave the work to someone else and told people she was unreliable. It almost sank her. She still wants blood." I met Sophie that afternoon in her cramped shop that smelled like ink and hope. She was short and wiry with a streak of purple hair and sharp eyes that looked like they'd cut glass if you needed them to. "You're a Turner," she said, not a question. "I'm Valerie," I said, "and I want to help you make them choke on the truth." She grinned, feral and fast. "Now you're singing." We slid our mock-up of the wedding program across her counter. It looked like a normal program on the outside. Inside, we'd laid out the facts, the ledger photo, the donation line, a short, clear timeline with plain words. At the back, a letter from Ruth to Tyler, the last one, the one no one ever answered. "I can print these and pack them like the real thing," Sophie said. "My driver can be on the vendor list. We'll swap them at the last second." I almost hugged her. "Thank you." Next, I reached out to a reporter named Maya Brooks. She answered on the second ring, her voice brisk. "I heard your family had a habit of keeping people quiet," she said. "I never liked that habit." "I'll give you everything," I said, "but you can't publish until I send you a single word. The instant I send it, you press go, and at that exact minute you forward the full file to the state office that can actually do something. It has to be timed." "What's the word?" she asked. "Now," I said. It felt right. "Then now means now," she said. "Send me your proof." I spent the evening scanning and organizing until my eyes watered. I gathered the article, the ledger, the photo of the car with the cracked fog light, the copies of Ruth's letters, the blue paper with the tiny flower, my notes on the men who came to Leo's job, the letter from the fancy firm that told me to shut up. I wrote a short, simple cover. "This is what they did then. This is what they're doing now. Please act." By midnight, the plan felt like a machine built out of borrowed parts. 3 fronts. Paper in hand at the wedding, a wave of news the moment the screens lit, and a package delivered to the state's top office the second the public saw it. If one part broke, another might hold. It was a lot of moving pieces. It was risky. It was everything we had. The night before the wedding, the sky hung low and gray over the city like a heavy lid. I had Leo and Ruth on a video call, our faces in small boxes, the connection glitching just enough to make it feel like we were shouting across a canyon. Ruth sat at her kitchen table, the shoebox at her elbow. Leo was in his car in a parking lot, dome light on, a fast food cup in the holder. I was at my own table, the grocery candle burning down to a stub. "We meet at the service entrance at 10, I said. "Sophie's driver will swap the boxes. I'll be inside in a catering jacket. Leo, your truck pulls up at 12:30 to make the mess at the gate. The cameras roll at 12:35. I text Maya at 12:36. One word. "Now," Leo said. "Right, can't get more simple than that." My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. It was Sophie. I picked up. "Hey," I said. They know," she whispered. Her voice was tight and breathy. "Two men from some security firm just walked out of my shop. They knew about a special print job for the Turner wedding. They asked to see my order forms. They knew what to look for." My heart stuttered. "What did you show them?" "I played dumb," she said. "They smiled like they were my friends and said they'd hate to see a nice business get in trouble. They said the family has had issues with stalkers. They said they'd be happy to vet our deliveries." The way she said vet made me want to break the phone in my hand. "I hid a box in the back under old catalogs, but the rest is gone." Her breath hitched. "They took them, Valerie. They just picked up the whole stack and walked out, saying they'd deliver them for me. I think there's a car parked across the street watching my door." I put my hand over my mouth for a second, like that could push the room back into place. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice steady. "You did the right thing. Stay inside, lock the door, we'll figure it out." She hung up with a quick, "Be careful." I turned back to the screen. Ruth's face had gone pale. Leo rubbed his jaw hard. "They got to the programs," I said. Saying it out loud made it more real. The three of us stared at each other like we were looking for a fourth person who wasn't there, someone with a magic fix. "They were always going to try something," Leo said, but his voice didn't carry much hope. "Doyle's guys are good at this." The candle guttered and went out. The room seemed to shrink without the small flame. I stared at my list, at the spot where the word programs sat like a missing tooth. Our plan had been built on the idea that every guest would hold the truth in their hands. Now that part was gone. It felt like the whole thing had come apart. "I have one box," Sophie had said. "One small stash, not nearly enough for a crowd of hundreds." I tried to do the math of who should get them, which hands would matter most, and it all crumbled in my head. Ruth reached through the screen with her voice. "We still have the other parts," she said. "We still have the slideshow, the news, the package to the state. We still have Tyler's name." I nodded because my neck knew what to do even if my brain didn't. "Right," I said, "right." But when I ended the call, the silence in my apartment dragged on my shoulders like wet cloth. I could feel my parents' house in my bones, the way sound used to carry down the halls, the way secrets soaked into the walls. I could hear Jane's voice in my head saying, "You really tried, didn't you?" Like a pat on a dog's head. I set my phone face down on the table and pressed my palms flat till they tingled. For a minute, or maybe 3, I let the fear run wild through me. I pictured the wedding going off like a movie, the flowers perfect, the smiles perfect, the truth shoved into a dark corner with a piece of tape over its mouth. Then I swallowed hard and stood up. If they wanted me to quit, they shouldn't have sent me that photo of myself through the window. They shouldn't have laughed in Leo's face. They shouldn't have put a check on Ruth's table and called it grace. I blew on the candle wick, smelling the smoke. The room held steady. We were not done, not even close. An hour after Sophie called, my phone lit up with Jane's name. I stared at it until the screen began to dim, then swiped to answer. "I didn't say hello, Val," she breathed, syrupy sweet like we were 13 and sharing a secret. "I heard about your little project with the programs." A soft laugh followed, gentle as a slap. "You really tried, didn't you?" Her pity slid over me like oil. I looked at the dead candle on my table and the stack of notes beside it, my hands still marked with ink. "What do you want, Jane?" "To help you," she said, with that perfect mix of worry and grace that made strangers love her. This is getting out of hand. You're upset, I get it. You've always felt overlooked. It's not your fault. But this is the worst possible time to act out. Act out. The words were a neat box. She wanted to tuck me inside it and close the lid. It's over, she continued, voice softer now, so kind I could almost forget the cut underneath. You can't win against us. We're the Turners. We have people to handle things. She paused, let the power of we hang in the air. Come home, get some rest. Let me take care of you. We can forget all this ever happened. Forget. I pictured Ruth's shoebox. I pictured Leo's hand shaking on the steering wheel. I pictured Tyler's face at 18, caught in a frame that would never move again. No, I said. She sighed, the sound of a queen tired of a stubborn subject. You'll ruin everything, she said, and I heard the real fear under the pity. You'll ruin your life most of all. Dad is furious. Mom is devastated. This isn't who you want to be known as. I can fix it. I can fix you, I swallowed, and it hurt. Say his name, I said. Say Tyler. Silence, then a soft, disgusted exhale. Don't be dramatic, you always were. Her words found every bruise I had and pressed. I could hear the room at home in the background, the bright clatter of people getting ready, the low hum of order being restored. Last chance, she said finally. Come home, be my sister again. I looked at the burnt wick. I tasted smoke. I was your sister, you just didn't want me. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. I hung up before she could turn it into something pretty. The quiet after the call was a heavy blanket I couldn't kick off. I sat there staring at the laptop's dark screen until my eyes burned. My brain told me it was done. The programs were gone. The pity had landed on me like dust. The wedding would go on and I'd be a footnote. The troubled sister who tried and failed. I opened the laptop anyway. The screen blinked to life and a tiny blue flower stared back at me from a file name I'd saved before I understood what it meant. I clicked it. The scan filled the screen, pale blue paper, centered words, that small pressed wildflower in the corner. It wasn't as loud as the ledger. It wasn't as sharp as the photo of the cracked fog lamp. But it was Jane, it proved she knew. It made her pity feel like poison. I sat up straighter. Paper could be grabbed. Boxes could be taken. But there was one part of the plan that lived in pixels and speakers and light. I could still get to the screens. I could still get to the sound. I found the folder where I kept the slideshow mock-ups I'd been quietly building for weeks, stealing family photos from public posts, matching fonts and colors until it looked like something Mom would approve with a smile. I opened the project and dragged the truth into it. The headline, the car, the ledger, and over the images I laid the audio file that made my heart clench when I played it. Ruth reading her last letter to Tyler. No music. No softening. My fingers shook, but the work was simple. Cut, paste, adjust timing, save. I labeled it like a normal file so the kid in the AV booth wouldn't think twice. I copied it to a small silver USB drive and slipped it into the pocket of my jacket. It clicked against the locket I always wore when I needed a spine. I sent a test text to Maya, "Are you there?" within seconds always. Tomorrow, when the lights dimmed for the perfect slideshow, I'd send one word to her. Now, she'd publish everything. She'd forward the file to Attorney General Carla Mason's office. While our guests gasped, the state would be opening a file that couldn't be closed with a check. They thought they'd won because they took our paper. Let them. They weren't looking at the booth in the back. They weren't watching me anymore. They'd erased me. That was their mistake. Morning cracked open like an egg, sticky light and new nerves. I dressed in black pants and a black shirt, hair tucked under a cap. A catering uniform is a cloak. People step around you like you're furniture. I added a simple apron and a clipboard I stole from my building's supply closet. My face in the mirror looked thinner than I remembered, older too, but my eyes were steady. The venue rose out of the green like something from a dream, tall white columns, glossy doors, flowers stacked in waves. Delivery vans lined the side entrance. Men in suits moved like chess pieces, and I knew some of them were Marcus Doyle's. They stood with their hands folded, eyes scanning for trouble that looked the way trouble usually looks. They didn't know to look for me. At the service door, I fell into a line of staff carrying trays wrapped in cling film. The kitchen was a hum of heat and clatter, the air thick with garlic and butter and nerves. No one was looking at me, that was the point. I moved through the back hallway, counting my steps, clipboard tucked to my chest. The USB in my pocket felt like a small, heavy heart. I kept my head down and my pace even, like I had a job to do and a boss to answer to. I caught a flash of myself in a stainless steel panel, unremarkable, perfect. Out in the grand hall, the world was all gold and white. Rows of chairs faced the altar, strings of flowers spilling between them like rivers. A string quartet tuned in a corner, bows scraping gently. Staff fluffed napkins and lined up champagne flutes in hard, bright rows. Up front, Mom and Dad stood together, faces arranged in pleasure, their bodies held just close enough to sell a story of unity. Jane swanned through a side doorway in a robe the color of cream, a stylist trailing behind. Her smile was the kind that had been practiced until it didn't break. Security hovered near the doors. I checked the time, a few minutes after noon. Any second now? Right on cue, a long delivery truck tried to nose into the driveway and then stalled like it lost its breath. The horn gave a lazy bellow. Staff started waving their arms. A handful of security rushed for the entrance. I slipped along the opposite wall, a moving shadow. The AV booth sat on a raised platform at the back behind a velvet rope, a little island of wires and screens. A young guy stood there in a rented suit, pale and serious, fiddling with a laptop. A headset sat crooked on his head. I stepped up and lifted the rope like I belonged. "Slideshow update from the bride's father," I said, keeping my voice low and bored. "He wanted the newer file, said the other one had the wrong baby photo at the end." The guy grimaced. "He's been texting me all morning," he said, grateful to hand the problem to anyone else. "Do you have it?" I handed him the USB, my hand steady. "He said use this exactly, the one labeled Turner Final 2. He nodded and plugged it in without looking closely, clicking through the folders with muscle memory. "Cool. Thanks." He was already distracted by his headset crackling in his ear. "Yeah, I can see the camera feed," he said to nobody I could hear. "No, we can't push the time. The senator has another event." I slid back under the velvet rope and returned to the sea of black shirts and heavy trays. At the entrance, two men in suits argued with the driver of the stalled truck, Leo. I recognized, even from the back, from the way his shoulders set when he dug in. He threw up his hands like a man exasperated with his own engine. Security gestured, phones out, watches checked. The clock ticked with them. I moved to a side door and leaned for a moment against the cool wood, my breath short and fast, my heart beating in my throat. Then I straightened, picked up a tray of water glasses and flowed into the current. By the time the first guests took their seats, my body had found its role. I moved where I was expected. I smiled when required and ducked when the men in suits cut across a path. I watched without staring. I listened without seeming to. I was a ghost in plain sight. The music shifted. The string players began something tender and expensive. Guests turned like flowers following the sun. Jane entered, a white wave edged in lace, her arm looped through Dad's. She glowed. That was the point of all this. Her glow took work. Daniel waited at the front, handsome and nervous, jaw tight, eyes damp enough to photograph. Mom dabbed her eyes with a linen handkerchief, carefully enough to spare her makeup. Dad handed Jane off and stepped back with a face like a man who had just bought a very important building. The senator, Caleb Morgan, smiled at the crowd. His teeth are a small billboard for good dentistry. He held a small book and a microphone. "Friends," he said, voice rich and smooth, "we're gathered to celebrate the union of two remarkable families." He launched into the talk I'd heard 100 times at different events. Trust, honor, legacy. He spoke about the power of truth. The irony tickled the back of my throat like a cough. I drifted to the back wall, tray balanced on one hand. The AV booth glowed like a lighthouse. The kid adjusted a slider, nodded to himself. He looked calm. Good. Calm is easy to manipulate. Jane and Daniel read their vows. They were beautiful on paper. They always are, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow. The words slid over the crowd like warm water. My skin felt too tight. I saw Ruth in my mind, hands wrapped around the shoebox, knuckles white. Senator Morgan lifted his eyes, smiling. And now, he said, the families have prepared a look back at the couple's journey. Every head turned to the screens. The lights dimmed. The quartet set down their bows. Someone sighed happily. This was the part people came for, besides the open bar and the chance to be seen. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket, buzzing against the USB shape like a tiny heartbeat. I pulled it out and opened a text thread already waiting with one person who would not look away. Maya here came back in a blink. I typed a single word. My thumb hovered for half a second over the send button, then I pressed it. Now. The blue bubble floated up, small and looking too simple to hold everything it carried. I tucked my phone back into my pocket, my mouth suddenly dry as chalk. On the platform, the AV kid hit spacebar. The screens flickered. A hush fell, that weird full silence that only happens when hundreds of people breathe in at once. Even the men in suits got still. The room leaned forward. I felt everything inside me lean too, toward the edge I'd chosen. I pictured the file racing through 1,000 veins, Maya's publish button, the message winking into Attorney General Carla Mason's inbox with every scan attached, the hum of the servers that would carry the story before anyone in this room could stand. I looked up at Jane, bathed in soft light, lashes lowered, smile poised for baby photos. I watched her be exactly who she'd planned to be in this exact moment. I thought of the blue flower pressed in a corner of paper. The hall waited, sweet as a held breath. The first image wasn't a baby picture. It was the headline, stark and black against white, teen dies in dawn hit and run. The room inhaled all at once. The gasp was a single animal sound, big enough to shake the flowers. Before anyone could blink, the next slide filled the screen. The grainy photo of a luxury SUV with a cracked fog lamp on the passenger side. I heard a glass tap against a chair leg somewhere behind me, a small clink in a huge silence. Someone whispered, "No," so softly I almost believed it was in my head. Then the ledger, the photo crisp and clear, the words easy to read. Front-end collision repair, passenger side, replace fog lamp, paid in cash, no name. The image hung there like a confession written in oil and paper. The speakers didn't play music. Ruth's voice came through, steady and warm and broken all at once. "Dear Tyler," she read, "I made your favorite pancakes this morning and I couldn't eat any of them. I sat at the table and listened for your footsteps and the scrape of your chair, and I heard only the clock." Her breath hitched in the recording and the sound reached into every corner of the hall. "I keep writing, even though nobody answers. I keep writing your name so it doesn't fade." All around me, phones began to vibrate and chirp like a field of crickets at dusk. Heads dropped. Thumbs moved, screens lit up faces in ghostly blue. Maya's piece had gone live. I didn't have to see it to know the headline, "Turner Family Tied to Decade-Old Hit-and-Run Cover-Up on Eve of Heiress's Wedding." Alongside it, the full package slid into the inbox of the state attorney general, timed to land with the first gasp. At the front, my dad shot out of his chair like he'd been electrified. "Turn that off," he roared at the AV booth, his voice big and ugly in a room designed for applause. The young tech flinched and stared at his keyboard as if a key might save him. Two of Marcus Doyle's men started toward the platform and then paused because the whole crowd was watching them now too. My mom didn't move at first. She just held her hand to her mouth, fingers trembling, and stared up at the screen like it was a window she just realized was a mirror. The color drained from her face until she looked made of paper. Jane stood at the altar, still as a statue in white. For a full second her face held, then it cracked. She turned, slow and searching, and found me in the back, her eyes locked on mine, and the thing inside them wasn't pity anymore. It was hate, pure and clean as a new blade. Daniel looked from the screen to Jane to my dad and back again, a man who suddenly realized he was standing on a trapdoor. His mouth opened like he might say something brave. He didn't. He just swayed and gripped the edge of the altar with white knuckles. Senator Caleb Morgan stepped back from the couple as if they were a spill he didn't want on his shoes. his smile died. He kept the microphone in his hand, which meant the whole room heard the small sound he made when he realized what kind of family he'd just blessed. On the screens, Ruth's voice kept going, calm in the storm. "I planted marigolds by the porch," she read. "You said they looked like little suns. I water them every day. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe because if I tell you, it feels true. Maybe because when I say your name, you're here." She paused. "Tyler, Tyler, Tyler." My phone buzzed in my pocket again and again like a heartbeat finding a faster rhythm. Reporters outside, messages stacking. People in that room staring at their feeds while the truth filled the air they were breathing. My dad's voice went hoarse. My mom's hand finally fell from her mouth. Jane didn't look away from me. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there with the tray in my hands while the curated world split down the middle and the light came in. 2 states away and 12 hours later, I watched the wedding explode on a small television mounted over a diner counter. The screen replayed the moment again and again, the headline, the car, the ledger, the faces going slack. The news anchor called it a bombshell in a voice that sounded a little too pleased. The words at the bottom of the screen changed every hour, but the tone didn't. The wedding of the century had become the crime of the decade, and nobody could get enough of it. Leo sat to my left, his elbows on the table, hands around a coffee mug he wasn't drinking from. He looked exhausted and newer at the same time, like a man who'd carried a backpack full of rocks for 10 years and had set it down in a field but wasn't sure how to stand yet. Ruth sat on my right, a napkin folded neatly under her palm, her eyes on the TV even when she blinked. A red banner scrolled across the bottom. The state attorney general, Carla Mason, had opened an investigation into my dad, my mom, and Jane Turner for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to cover up a hit and run. The chyron didn't say my dad and my mom, it used their names. I said the titles in my head anyway because they were the words my mouth knew. My dad, my mom, my sister. The Whitmore family statement flashed next. Annulment. Deep disappointment, prayers for all involved. Daniel's campaign website was already dark. Clips played of donors walking briskly to cars, of a plaque with my family's name being covered with a gray tarp by a man with kind hands. Commentators talked about reputations like they were buildings that had caught fire. We didn't toast, we didn't hug, we didn't do anything that looked like winning. We sipped coffee that had gone cold twice and let the new shape of the world settle into place. Justice was moving. It didn't feel like a party. It felt like a door closing behind us and another one opening somewhere we couldn't see yet. My phone lay face up on the table like a sleeping animal. It didn't ring. It didn't buzz with any numbers from my old life. There would be no message from my mom asking if I'd eaten, no tight text from my dad with a list of demands dressed up as advice. Jane wouldn't call to try out a new tone. The silence felt honest. In the diner window, my reflection looked older than it did a week ago. There were shadows under my eyes, a new line at the corner of my mouth, but the set of my shoulders was different. I wasn't bracing against a shove I couldn't see. My back didn't curve to fit a shape someone else chose. I looked tired. I also looked free. Outside, a truck rattled by. The smell of bacon drifted from the kitchen. A waitress in pink sneakers refilled our cups and said nothing. The TV ran a split screen. A photo of Tyler in his graduation gown on one side, a photo of my parents at a gala on the other, both smiles hard to look at for different reasons. The cost was written everywhere. The family I had was gone, not just the people but the safety net, the old stories, the rooms that knew my footsteps. I'd burned them and I couldn't unstrike the match. If there was a new story, it wasn't going to have marble floors or perfect place settings. I looked at Leo's hands, nicked and strong. I looked at Ruth's small, steady profile. This was my table now. This was my family. A wronged man who stayed, a mother who said no to money, and me, the girl they tried to erase, who refused to disappear again. Ruth reached over and set her hand on mine. It was warm and careful, the way someone holds a bird so it won't fly into a window. "Thank you," she whispered. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you," I whispered back and meant it for more than I could say. I don't know where I'll live next month. I don't know who I'll be when this is all over. I just know I'm not a secret anymore. I don't have to speak in half-truths in quiet rooms. I said Tyler's name out loud in the place they never wanted it spoken, and the sound is still moving. That's enough for today. That's enough to let me breathe. Sometimes the only way to heal is to make sure the truth is heard. If you've ever had to fight to tell your story, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Subscribe for more first-person stories like this, and I'll see you in the next one.